Hey guys, you've reached the Space Between podcast. My name is Renae. This is the podcast that tells the story of the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. You have reached this podcast and it is called All Things Gorge. That is the name of this episode. This is episode 61 of the Space Between podcast. So if this is your first time here, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you are a fan of the Dave Matthews Band, but if you are not, this story that I tell every Friday is a different point of view from a different fan of the Dave Matthews Band. So what brings us together is the love of the band, but what the story that we're telling, there are just so many amazing stories from so many amazing fans. And I love that we have a like-mindedness and that we can come together and bring issues that need to be talked about, or we can just simply talk about the band that we love that has been around for 32 years. We are so lucky to be alive in a time where this band is still playing and still putting out music. Now, I've got two things to tell you before we move on to this podcast. Number one, if you continue to listen to this episode, you will hear my episode, All Things Gorge, and it will start here just in a few minutes. Number two, this podcast episode was made just a little bit different than the past 60 episodes. And why I say that is because going to the Gorge for the very first time was such a huge experience. I mean, if you've ever been, the story that I'm about to tell is a huge story because the Gorge is just such a big venue. It was such a big voyage for us who were coming from the middle of the country here in Northwest Arkansas. And so I say all that to say the story that I created to tell my All Things Gorge episode is very much a visual story. I did do a lot of video at the Gorge because I wanted to tell the story as a person that had never been before, and I wanted it to be helpful for people that had maybe never been or had been a long time and they were looking to just refresh their memory or to see what was new or to just maybe see what my experience was and to see, hey, does everyone truly have a different experience? And I'm sure that is the case. But this is the story of my first time going to the Gorge with my husband, but also with a podcast, the Space Between podcast. And so I really wanted to go into this reporting the story of why do people travel so far, or why do so many people travel so far to go to this venue that a lot of people call Heaven's Amphitheater. So stay tuned to listen to all of it. But what I want to say is I encourage you, if you're not a visual person, if you're not on YouTube, if you don't really have time, find time for this one episode. It is 35 minutes, so it's a quick watch. You can watch it on your TV, on your YouTube app. My channel is called The Space Between Podcast, so it is very easy to find. You will see several videos there on my YouTube channel, but you're going to look for the latest one that's called All Things Gorge. I encourage you to take 35 minutes to watch this because, again, it's a visual story. But for those of you that are not visual and really just want to hear the audio of this podcast, stay tuned. We're about to get to that, but you will hear me make many references that say, in that video, this is what we saw. So there's going to be some audio that may not make sense, but again, that will just maybe send you to our YouTube channel to check out the full video. I do want to say a special thank you to my editor of this podcast, Andy Mendoza. If you have not checked out his YouTube channel, he has an amazing Dave Matthews Band YouTube channel. So just look for Andy Mendoza. He's a friend that, of course, I met, going to Dave Matthews Band concerts. He loves the band, has been a fan for a very long time. He lives near Austin, Texas, and so he is always at the Texas shows. But on his YouTube channel, you're going to find really just some high quality videos of many concerts in their entirety. So be sure to check out his YouTube. Be sure to, like his videos and subscribe because ultimately that is the help that we need from you guys is to subscribe and like to these videos, because that's the only way we can see if people are watching it. Yes, we can see the views, but it really does help if you can subscribe. And then again, if you're listening to this podcast for the very first time, here's how you can help me continue to produce and make this podcast. Every time you download an episode, it gives me like a point. So that is how we know how many people have listened to this podcast, is by downloads. We have just recently just turned over the 10,000 mark. And so I want to thank you so much that 10,000 times someone wanted to listen to, me tell the story. But it's the story that people are tuning in for. It's the story of the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. And so guys, I've held you long enough. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to see this video in its entirety. But guys, if you're listening and you've got a long car ride, or maybe you've just popped your earphones in your ears and you're at the gym, or you're taking a walk, or hey, maybe you're cleaning the house, enjoy my All Things Gorge audio, but be sure to check out the video if you have a few minutes. Guys, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band. Here we go into All Things Gorge episode 61 of the Space Between podcast.